All right, guys, what's going on? Needs more drums back in Accelerando, our 12-hour city for episode 10, which means it's the 10th hour of the build. And so that means we're getting close to the end. Only two more episodes to go until we're done with the initial 12-hour build of the city. And then after that, I still plan to do a couple of episodes to kind of, jump back in, do a bit of like a recap, balance out some things like our transit, kind of look at some different areas, maybe even take on a couple of more projects that I think might need a little time that could wait till after the sort of initial city is built. The main purpose of this whole series was to kind of just see what's even possible in 12 hours. When you focus on some more important parts of the city, but it would be nice to kind of come back, add in some additional little fun projects, to kind of make the city feel more complete. Like I'm thinking about some waterfront parks and things like that I just want to spend a little bit more time on sort of after the fact. And I'll probably still even come back to the city on my own time, maybe in some live streams in the future or something like that. It'll just be nice to have a city that's feels somewhat complete, that we can kind of come back to and just play around with every once in a while. So who knows? But anyway, so this episode, since we're kind of getting into the end of the build, we're kind of just going back and taking a look at some different areas, kind of bouncing around, making some improvements where we can, adding in some different like little neighborhoods and details and filling in some of the gaps and things like that. So the first thing that you saw me build there was a highway on-ramp. I said at the end of the last episode that I needed to build that. That's like a main road. I meant to put a ramp there a lot sooner. So now we have another connection for people to take when they're coming into the city, which is very important because right now there's actually not another way outside of the highway or actually the passenger port. There's no other way to get people in from like the outside connection. So usually there's like a rail connection or something. We don't have that. We only have a rail system that works, within the city, but nothing that connects to like an outside connection because of the way that the map is. So then here, I really wanted to fill in this campus a bit more. When I built this, I kept meaning to come back to it because I think this is like a really, really important part of the city. And I meant this to be kind of like a focal point. I wanted to really detail this up and leave some room, obviously, for some future expansion. Like I think that there are some additional buildings that the university has, or like this actual asset where I can, do some upgrades to it to add some additional buildings, additional capacity later on if I want to. But we don't need to do that yet. And I think a lot of them are even within the footprint of the building, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But there's plenty of land here to work with. We have a lot of room to expand, if we need to. And so for now, I'm trying to keep it kind of simple. I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to make it feel complete. So a couple of tricks that I used here were just one is pathways. Just I think adding in some pathways really help fill space nicely, and they're really easy to adjust or delete in the future if you need to. And then two, I just love trees. Trees are so quick to put down, and they add so much. In terms of like making an area feel developed, feeling complete. So we had some pathways here, we had some trees here, and then the last thing is like surfaces. I do like to add in surfaces quite a bit. I didn't really spend too much time with that here since I just kind of wanted to do this as quick as possible. But in some of the other areas, especially like in more urbanized developments, when you're like looking at trying to fill the gaps within a downtown or something, adding in some different surfaces and making like some little, almost like custom parks and plazas really helps to make those areas feel complete. And I probably didn't do that as much this episode as I should have, but it is what it is. That's what the next couple of episodes are for as well. But then in addition to the pathways and the trees here, I did go ahead and add in some different zones. So you'll see I added in some medium density, and the building to the left right now, that's the French low rent housing. Those look really good as I imagine that they're like college dormitories, right? So like some little dorms and things, student apartments, student housing. Those buildings do a great job of kind of replicating that because they're very like, you can get similar looking assets next to each other. So it looks like they're supposed to be there. They're supposed to be kind of grouped together, and they're sort of part of like a dedicated development, so to speak, right? So I love using those for this purpose. And one of my go-to tricks when I'm building any kind of university campus I'll always add in some like low rent housing or something over there, because, you know, you figure that students will need that affordable housing anyway. They probably don't have time for a full-time job. At least that's why I think about it in a realistic sense. I don't know how the game thinks about it, but, you know, I like to kind of just imagine, you know, why things are where they are, and that everything kind of serves a purpose. But yeah, again, just here adding in some more pathways. And I really wanted to do something kind of interesting here, which you'll see in a second. It's add like a dedicated beach. I think that it would be really cool, like if you went to this school and, you know, you got done with class and you can go and sit on the beach right on the side of this, you know, ocean or whatever body of water this is. You can just come and relax on the beach, and you have this beautiful view like from your classroom to the beach, which may or may not be productive, you know, good for student productivity. If you're sitting there going, man, I really just want to get outside and go to the beach instead of being in class all day. At least I know that's what I'd be doing. But I went to school like not even anywhere close to a beach whatsoever, so I'd be a bit jealous. But yeah. So adding in some trees again here, trying to kind of map out where I want the boundary of the beach to sit, and I'm kind of leaving some gaps, you know, for some like little entryways. Gonna add in some little pathways, some little like dirt pathways to kind of connect the beach to these concrete pathways. So just, you know, it's important to leave these little gaps here and there. And it's also been fun to use palm trees in this build. I feel like a lot of my builds, I never get to use palm trees, and I love palm trees. You know, I don't live in an area where there are palm trees, so I think it's always kind of cool to put this in some of my builds when I can. But yeah, just placing down the sand texture now, and it doesn't look terrible. I gotta admit. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And as you'll see, it's, you know, you don't need much to make a good looking beach, in my opinion. I think that, you know, you put down some chairs, you put down some little some of those little like stands or what do you call them, like concession stands and things like that. It really helps, and some umbrellas. It just really helps to kind of make that area feel more lively, even though in the vanilla game there's no way to like make people actually kind of gather at this place yet. But you know, if I ever were to put like some kind of mod in one day, I could probably add like groups of people to this area or something. But yeah, speaking of mods and things, so Iceflake just released their second patch for the game, and I actually recorded this episode like a few days before they released that patch. And so I'm really excited about a lot of the things that were added. I'm excited that they added a zoning toggle. They also added in a cool stadium asset. And I also downloaded the new, there were 2 new content creator packs. So there was the Office Evolutions, which adds like sort of a medium density office in a way from what I've seen, which is a really, really great addition to the game. Something that I haven't seen yet, and I really could have used that in this build. And then 2, there's a like a transit creator pack by Bad Peanut, who has a bunch of, you know, new stations and everything like that, train stations and trams, and just these really, really great looking assets. I've seen, you know, some videos about them, and I'm really excited to build those in not only in, you know, even in this city, but just generally within the game. And so that's part of the reason why I want to come back to this build after these first 12 hours are done, is because there's been like since I've started recording this series, there have been so many new additions to the game where it's kind of like to jump in and kind of try to, you know, build something in an hour and wrap my head around some of the new expansions and things. I don't have like the time to do both of those at once. So I try to, you know, kind of mess with those like off camera, see what new additions are to the game, and then see what I can like pull into this build maybe after the fact. But we might hold out on seeing some of those new assets in this build for right now. That might be something that we come back a bit later and do, you know, once the initial build wraps up. But yeah, so here, just coming back to this area, kind of redoing it. I had some ideas as I was watching the last episode, as I was editing it. I thought there were some ways that I could maybe make this area a bit better. And so just reorienting things, like making a more robust city block that was a little bit more square, so that way I can fit in some buildings a bit better. And we're gonna fill in this gap here with just some more residential. I think there's some mixed use in here too. I thought this would be a good area for a little mixed use community, you know, kind of like a little, not a super dense area, but somewhere where, again, it's close to the university. You figure that like students might live here. It's also close to the downtown, so this is kind of like a cool little little neighborhood in a way. You know, you have this little square right here, and then you also have just across the street the neighborhood that we added in the last episode that's a bit bigger with the you could see it kind of there on the bottom of the screen now, like across this Honeybrook Street. It's really cool to add in like I love building these like medium density neighborhoods. I feel like they have a strong sense of community. You know, you can shop, eat, just hang out all kind of in the same area. And you know, there's probably going to be like some dedicated city services here. Like I think I put down a fire station. I'm pretty sure there's a school not too far from here. Realistically, my goal with areas like this is like if I were an urban planner, I want to design something where like you don't need a car, which is super un-American of me because, you know, living in America, cars are just everything. You know, you have just suburban sprawl everywhere. And I kind of, when I build my cities in this game, I kind of like to go in odds of that. You know, it's very easy to like take influence and inspiration from the areas that you know and are familiar with and that you live, you know, in or by. Where like I always take, I lived in Chicago and grew up, you know, kind of by Chicago. So I always take a lot of inspiration from Chicago and the surrounding area. But I also like to have builds like this where I'm not really taking inspiration from my, you know, home, like from familiar areas too much, right? Like I like to sort of think outside the box and think about just what works from a functionality standpoint. You know, maybe not what I've seen, but what would be something that I would like, an area where I would want to live? What would be a city that would have features that I would think would be beneficial? And so one of those for me is like walkability and you know, just having access to everything without having to own a car, which again in the States is just like unheard of because everybody has a car here. It's a very car centric area. And so even this, what I'm building right now, we have this train station. This I kind of envisioned as a bit of a transit oriented development, which I understand is a you know, I'm no urban planner by any means, but I'm familiar with this concept where like, you know, you build a little community, like a little neighborhood around a like a train station or like a bus terminal or something, you know, there some sort of transit hub, right? You know, there's a lot of people traveling to and from this place, or this is going to be like a really good destination. It naturally lends itself to be to create like a walkable environment. And so you want to build like medium density, you want to build you know, shops, apartments, you want to throw in like a school, parks, right? You want amenities so that people don't have to travel too far to get the things that they need. And then it promotes, you know, when you're not driving, you're outside walking, you just have healthier people, you have happier people because you're getting, you know, fresh air, more sunlight. Like there's a lot of benefits to doing stuff like this. And so when I continue to build my cities in this game, I want to build with that mindset. I want to build functional cities where I would imagine, you know, people would be happy, where I would be happy living, right? Like this is like this is a game. These are my cities. I want to build them. You know, I want to build what I want, right? So anyway, it's kind of that's what's cool about these games is you get the freedom to kind of experiment with like different types of builds and you know, maybe build something that you're not necessarily as familiar with, but something that you think is just really cool. So yeah, this area admittedly is a bit hard to work with. I'm trying to, there's no commercial domain right now, and a lot of this I'm zoning as commercial. So I expect this to kind of grow. Hopefully it'll grow within like this, after this episode and the next couple episodes before we get done with the series. I'd like to see this area become a little bit more complete. But yeah, just trying to transition from the sort of like the downtown to the suburbs to kind of like this industrial area where, you know, we're getting close to like the port and everything. So I imagine that there's going to be some pretty heavy commercial, some office, you know, industrial office type uses here. And there's some residential stuff too, but probably not the most desirable. But at the very least, I imagine that this would be a really good area for people that work in the industrial area to live. So I want to provide some you know, relatively affordable housing, a lot of apartments, maybe some low rent, you know, but a lot of medium density here so that, you know, anybody that works in this area is close by to their workplace and they don't have to travel like all the way from, you know, the downtown or from the suburbs to come and work in the industry or anything. So that's part of the advantage of this community. And one of the things that I thought was really cool was it's the Netherlands pack. I never installed that, and I don't know why. I finally got around to installing it, and so I've been experimenting with some of those buildings, and I like them a lot. They're really cool, kind of cool apartments. I know they're not maybe the most American. I know this is kind of like a North American build, but I think that they kind of fit, you know, when you use them in a certain way, like in these little squares and stuff, they kind of fit. It's kind of cool to make like these little housing complexes and stuff. Just they look kind of modern, you know, like those prefab houses. You do see a lot of that stuff, even in like, you know, cities like Chicago and stuff. You do see a lot of these prefab apartments and everything. So I don't mind using stuff like that. I kind of like the variety that these different region packs give, and I can tie them into these builds kind of in tasteful ways, you know, depending on the building. So it doesn't work for everything, right? There are some buildings that just aren't going to work. Some region pack assets that aren't going to work in every build, but some of them do. Some of them are pretty versatile. So I like to just have them installed and kind of see what I can do with them. And this is, you know, no exception. So trying to fill in some of the gaps here. Again, just more trees. Trees are so important. I can't say that enough. I really think that they just help bring these areas to life, you know, give a little bit more greenery. If you've seen my other episodes, you've heard me talk about this probably more than I should be, but yeah, one thing I got to come back and do though is really pay attention to that power line too, and you know, clean up some of the trees around there, make sure that it's not super dense on the power lines, make sure that it kind of looks like it cuts through the landscape. But yeah, this river, I've neglected this river for a long time as well. When I envisioned building this city, I always wanted to try to do a bit more around this river and make it more of like a focal point. And so I think that like this whole little transit hub here is in a bit of a tough spot. But that reminds me, one of the new assets from the one of the content creator packs, the stations one or whatever, is like a new tram depot, and it's smaller. And I might swap that out later on, because that tram depot is just so big. It's sitting right on the river. It kind of takes up some valuable real estate. I can't really use that waterfront for anything. So I might switch that up maybe after the fact. That'll be one of the things on the chopping block, is kind of go back to that area and redo that, because, you know, I've only been able to work with like what's been in the base game so far. I haven't, you know, gone and downloaded like any modded assets or anything like that. This is all vanilla. I intend to keep it that way. I like playing that way for now. It's just very safe, no crashes. I feel like when you start adding in mods, you could spend hours in the you know, you call it the workshop, but like Paradox mods, just downloading everything and trying to see, you know, what would fit. Then you download stuff and you don't even use it. It's a dangerous game, right? So there's something about like right now there's so many assets in the vanilla game, especially with like all the region packs, with the content creator packs. I don't even know what I have, to be honest. And so that's been another fun part about this whole series, has been just, again, like I was talking about experimenting with like the Netherlands pack and these different region packs and different assets. It's just been really fun to see what I even have available to me in the game. And you know, in the next episode, I'm actually gonna dedicate it to putting down some signature buildings and like making, you know, increasing the entertainment value, the leisure value of some of these neighborhoods, and kind of making each neighborhood create like these unique destinations within these neighborhoods. You know, putting down like specific restaurants or some of these specific like venues and attractions that come as part of the signature buildings. I never really mess with those too much, and so it'll be cool to see what we've unlocked so far. Well, I think we actually have everything unlocked because I did that for this game, but for this series. But it'll be cool to see what's available, because I haven't really given it that great of a look yet. But yeah, here I was trying to figure out how to get those buildings, and I thought that I was zoning the right size, and I can never seem to get them to pop up. So I think I was using the right ones, but maybe I'll come back to that too. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't fill in this area before. It was just kind of like sitting there. It was looked a bit empty. So I figured I'd go back and change that up. But yeah, here's one spot where I actually did go ahead and improve the waterfront a bit. I decided to add this waterfront bike trail. And this was my vision kind of from the start. I wanted to save, I didn't want to develop too much right on the river, because I wanted to save the very, very edge of the river for a trail. And I figure, like, you know, I envisioned like a bike trail that would, and I think that was even before the bike patch even came out. And I don't even have any, you're not even going to see any bikes in the city yet, because the whole like bike parking and the way that the bikes navigate, I haven't even put down any like bike parking yet or anything. That might be a after the fact kind of episode thing as well. But I think it's cool to at least have the infrastructure in place, so that, you know, when we do come and add the actual bike mechanic by putting down the parking so that people actually use the pathways, we at least have these pathways in place. People know where they're going, and it'll just be kind of cool to see people using those. But yeah, just cleaning up the riverfront, adding in some trees and making it look really nice. I love the combined bike and pedestrian path. I can just imagine, you know, going for a run along the river or taking your bike. You know, you should be able to get to some different neighborhoods pretty quickly on the bike path, and it's a very scenic route. And one thing that I liked about that area too is that you're still close to people. You know, you're riding by houses, so people can see you like on the trail, which is a big safety component when you're trying to build things like that. You know, people, when you're out and about like that, you kind of want to be not seen, but you want to be able to be seen, right? You want people, you want to feel safe. You want to feel like there are people that are around there that can, you know, if you're in trouble, they can help you. They can see, you know, that you're in trouble and call for help. Big thing to consider when you're like building trails and things like that. You don't want them so secluded that like they actually, you know, lend themselves to being unsafe, because then people use them in the game, but like in real life, you figure like people probably won't use them. So again, just something to consider from a practical standpoint. But yeah, so here, this is kind of the last little neighborhood that we fill in here, and you'll see like throughout this episode, I've just added in like a couple of different, you know, little suburbs and little city blocks here and there. And this was kind of like a cool little addition, using again that Netherlands pack to build some of those apartments, and just making it a little square with the parking lot roads. I love those roads. I think they're awesome. And, you know, they lend themselves to like something that you would see like in an apartment complex or something. So last but not least, I wanted to add in the cell tower. We needed one in this city, and I haven't built one yet. No better place than a hillside. I figured, why not over here by the university? It just looks like a perfect place to build one of these, and we can have a little service road that kind of sinks up the hill, since we're not actually doing any development on this right now. But with that being said, we're about approaching the end of the build. 2 more episodes to go. Been having a great time, and I cannot wait to see how the city turns out after we spend a little bit more time kind of filling in some of the details and adding in some cool little features. So hope you guys all have a great week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.